In early 2026, testing on common bread products revealed something unexpected. Residues of a widely used herbicide were detected in multiple brands, including products labeled organic, whole wheat, and healthy. And in some cases, the levels were significantly higher than what most people would expect in everyday food. This isn't about one brand. It's about how the system works, because the label you trust doesn't always tell the full story. And by the end of this video, you'll understand which breads to avoid, which ones are actually cleaner, and how to spot the difference in seconds. Let's break it down. Part 1. The problem you don't see. Bread is one of the most common foods in North America. It's eaten every morning in sandwiches by adults and by children, and because it feels basic, people don't question it. But modern bread production is not simple. It involves large-scale farming, industrial processing, and long supply chains, which means what ends up in the final product is not always obvious, even in products labeled organic. And that's where things start to get complicated. Part 2. The brands. Main investigation. Number 9. Market Pantry Organic. This is a private label brand, marketed as affordable, organic, simple. But independent testing has shown detectable herbicide residue. Now, here's the key issue. Organic certification focuses on how the crop is grown, not necessarily what ends up in the final product after environmental exposure. That includes drift from nearby conventional farms. So the label may be accurate, but the outcome is still affected. And that's a gap most consumers don't understand. Number 8. 365 Whole Foods. This one surprises people, because it comes from a store built on clean eating premium standards. And yet, testing has still found measurable residues. Again, not necessarily from direct use, but from environmental exposure shared supply chains. The takeaway? Even high-end retailers are not immune to the same system. Number 7. Nature's Own. This brand doesn't claim to be organic, but it's marketed as natural, simple, familiar. And here's the issue. Beyond residue concerns, the ingredient list often includes preservatives, emulsifiers, dough conditioners. These are used to extend shelf life, improve texture, reduce cost. But they also mean this is not traditional bread. It's a processed product. Number 6. Pepperidge Farm. This brand positions itself as premium, traditional, high quality. But behind that image, it still operates within industrial scale production, which includes large wheat sourcing networks, standardized processing, extended shelf life formulation. And again, residue levels can reflect the supply chain, not the brand image. Number 5. Arnold Organic. This is where perception really matters, because it has the organic label, whole grain, messaging, premium positioning. But look at the ingredients. You'll often find added sugar, processed oils, stabilizing agents, which raises the question, is this traditional bread or a modern product built for shelf life? Number 4. Sara Lee. This brand is extremely common, especially in family households. But testing has shown notable residue levels in some samples. Combined with added sugars, processed ingredients, it becomes clear this is convenience bread, not nutritional bread. Number 3. Wonder Bread. This is one of the most recognizable names, and it doesn't pretend to be organic. But it represents the extreme version of industrial bread. Highly processed flour, additives, texture engineering. The result? Long shelf life, soft texture, but very far from traditional baking.
Have a healthy lunch, sweetie.
Number 2. Dave's Killer Bread. This is where things get controversial, because this brand is widely trusted, often recommended, and strongly marketed as healthy. And to be fair, it does have better ingredient sourcing, organic certification. But testing has still shown detectable residue levels, at lower levels than conventional brands, but still present. And that leads to the bigger realization.
No risk.
Organic does not mean zero exposure. It means lower risk, not no risk. Number 1, Village Hearth. This one stood out because testing showed significantly higher levels than other brands. Now, results can vary by batch, and testing methods differ, but this highlights something important. The system itself allows variability, and consumers have no visibility into that. Part 3. The real issue. Let's step back, because at this point, it's easy to think, okay, I'll just avoid these brands. But that's not the full picture. Across everything we've looked at, one pattern becomes very clear. The problem is not just the brand, it's the system. A system built on shared supply chains, industrial agriculture, and large-scale processing. Let's break that down. 1. Shared supply chains. Most major bread brands don't control their wheat from seed to shelf. They source from the same global commodity markets, which means the same farms, the same regions, the same harvesting methods, and often the same exposure risks. So even if two brands look completely different, they may be using wheat from the exact same source. That's why you see similar patterns across testing. Not because every brand is identical, but because they're pulling from the same system. 2. Agricultural practices. Modern farming is optimized for yield efficiency and predictability, not necessarily purity. In many regions, crops are treated in ways that prioritize faster harvest, uniform drying, reduced loss. And those practices can affect what remains on the crop, even for farms that follow organic standards, because fields don't exist in isolation. Air moves, water moves, soil shifts, and that creates cross-contamination risk, which is rarely visible on a label. 3. Environmental exposure. This is the part most consumers never think about. Even if a farmer does everything correctly, their crops can still be exposed to neighboring fields, airborne drift, shared equipment, which means organic does not equal zero exposure. It means lower exposure within a defined standard. And that distinction matters, because marketing simplifies it, but reality is more complex. 4. Industrial processing. Even after the wheat is harvested, it goes through milling, transport, storage, blending, at scale. And during that process, different batches are often mixed together, which further reduces traceability. So by the time it becomes bread, it's no longer tied to a single source. It's part of a system. What this means for you. This doesn't mean everything is bad, but it does mean switching brands alone doesn't solve everything. Because if the underlying system is the same, the differences between brands can be smaller than you expect. The real shift. So the real shift isn't find the perfect brand. It's understand how the system works, so you can read labels differently, question marketing, and make more informed decisions. Because once you see it, you stop relying on assumptions and start looking at ingredients, sourcing, and processing. Part 4. Better options. Now let's shift the focus, because not everything in this category is the same. There are brands that take a different approach. Not perfect, but meaningfully different. Food for Life. This is one of the most well-known alternatives, and the difference starts with how the bread is made. Instead of using refined flour, they use sprouted grains. That changes everything.
When grains
Why
are
sprouted grains matter?
Enzymes activate
When grains are sprouted,
starch.
enzymes activate. Starch begins to break down. Nutrient availability increases, which can lead to lower glycemic impact, easier digestion, more stable energy release compared to conventional bread. Ingredient simplicity. Look at the ingredient list. It's short. Whole grains, water, natural fermentation. No preservatives, emulsifiers, or shelf life additives, which means it behaves differently. It doesn't last as long. It often needs refrigeration. And that's actually a signal. Less processing, less intervention. Trade-off. The texture is denser, less soft, less processed feeling, which some people don't like. But from a formulation standpoint, it's closer to traditional bread. 1 degree organics. Now this is where transparency becomes the focus. Because the biggest issue in the system is visibility. And this brand tries to address that directly. Traceable sourcing. Every product is linked to specific farms. You can scan a code, see where ingredients come from, understand the supply chain. That's rare, because most brands don't show you that level of detail.
They don't show you that level of
Batch
detail.
testing.
Batch testing.
Instead of relying only on certification, they use additional testing layers, which helps reduce uncertainty and gives consumers more data to work with. Ingredient approach. Again, simple formulation, no unnecessary additives, no artificial stabilizers, no extended shelf life engineering, which aligns more closely with how bread was traditionally made. Where the industry is moving. These brands represent a shift, not toward perfection, but toward more transparency, more accountability, and more informed consumers. Because the future of food isn't just better products, it's better information. So people can make decisions based on reality, not just marketing. Final thought for this section. You don't need to panic, but you do need to pay attention. Because once you understand how the system works, what labels actually mean, and what to look for, you gain control again. And that's the goal, not fear, awareness. Final truth. Bread feels simple, but today, it's part of a complex system where labels simplify, marketing reassures, but reality is layered. The goal is not fear, it's awareness. Because once you understand how it works, you make better decisions. So next time you buy bread, don't just look at the front of the bag. Look at the ingredients, the sourcing, and the processing. Because that's where the truth is. Subscribe to Food Truth North, because the more we break this down, the clearer the system becomes. Stay informed, stay aware, and know what you're eating.